Okay, now we've covered a whole lot of ground inside Photoshop, so it's time to talk a little bit about how masks work in other tools that you might be using on their own or in conjunction with Photoshop. One of my favorite set of plugins and things for editing photos, if you've got a Mac, is the MacPhun toolset. So for part 5, we're going to look at how you can mask inside some of those tools. I've already opened up a photo, yet again another Yosemite photo, that needs some edits, and you can see it's an okay photo, but like a lot of these photos, they're kind of flat when you look at them in their raw form. Because I'm going to use a MacPhun filter, I want to create a copy immediately because I know that MacPhun will just hijack whatever layer it's on. So I've created this copy, and I'm going to go up here to my filter menu, and I'm going to go to the Creative Kit and start with one of my favorites with the Intensify plugin. It's going to take it just a little bit to load. Now, inside Intensify, you probably noticed that you already have some very Photoshop-like concepts, and that starts with layers. Just a personal preference of mine, I kind of like to leave the base layer alone so I can remember what I started with. So I usually add a layer to start with before I do any edits at all. And then a lot of times I'll just go through some of the presets that are over here until I find something that I like. I know that one of my goals for this photo is to kind of intensify and boost the way the rocks look as well as the way the sky looks. And so down here in detail enhancement, there's a lot of different tools that can do that. One of my favorites is feature amplification. And you see when I first apply it, it's a lot. So we want to probably pull it back just a little, not too much. I really like what that's doing for the rocks. When I go in and look at this in full detail, I'm not sure it's the one I want to use yet. I think I might want to come back to it. I think that what I might want to use first is something like tack sharp or mid-tone structure. So here is tack sharp, and now if we come in, we'll see a lot more detail inside the rock itself. Let's see if mid-tone structure or mega details. Mega details has got to be scary, right? Oh yes, that's definitely scary. When we go in and look at that 100%, yeah, there's too much of everything. I think even if we dial it back, that one won't work. So let's go with mid-tone structure. That didn't do much, or maybe it did, it just hadn't gotten there yet. Ooh. Okay, I think I like this one best. So I'm going to leave mid-tone structure there, and when I zoom in and look at it, I'm trying to pay attention to what it's doing to the sky, and I actually don't have a problem with what this one's doing to the sky right now. So I'm going to leave that one alone, and I'm just going to hit a plus and get a new layer. And in this layer, I am going to look at some sky details. So we hit sky, and you can see that we're starting to get, like now we can see the center spots that I missed before. We know those are going to have to be cleaned out when we get back into Photoshop. If we zoom in, we can see that it's added a whole lot of noise into the sky. If I dial that back, is there a middle ground? Nope, I don't think we can use sky details on this one. So instead of sky details, what can we use instead? We could, let's see what happens if we do detail extractor. Oh wow, a lot. I like it though. We can dial this back. Now when we come in, we have a lot more great features on the rocks. So when I get in 100%, you can see those rocks are really coming alive. I don't know if I've managed to get any of the climbers on here, but you could definitely see how these rocks are something that you could climb. I'm gonna back it up just a little bit more. But what I don't like is what it's doing to the sky. You can see a ton of noises coming in. So inside of Intensify, we can actually correct that right here and not have to go back and adjust that part in Photoshop. And we can do it with a mask. It's not obvious that there's not like a button here that says, oh, let's mask it. Instead, you have these little buttons at the top. And you'll notice one of these It's called draw mode. It lets you put a paintbrush in there, and another one is an eraser. And I would say if you want to add your preset or whatever you've got going on in your adjustment layer to a small area of your image, use the paintbrush. If you want to take it away from a small area, you use the eraser. And you can see when you hover over it, it has mask, draw mode, and then erase mask. So if we go into eraser mode, you can come out here and you see we get a circle. This should look kind of familiar to you. It's very much like the circle you get in Lightroom. We can make it bigger or smaller with these tools up here, or just like in Photoshop, we can use the left bracket and right bracket to change the size. The yellow circle inside it is important because between the yellow circle and the black circle, that's the area that's getting feathered. It's your transition zone. And so if I draw this right here, for example, there'll be part of the effect on the top of Half Dome, but not all of it. If I did it here, the effect would partially be in the sky and covering Half Dome. What I really want to do is I want that transition to start here, and I'm painting up. And I don't know if you noticed, but right over here in the corner, you can see how the black is starting to come in, and suddenly that layer is beginning to look a lot like a layer mask does inside of Photoshop, right? So paint over it. And as we go, we're going to find some places where you need to make that brush a little smaller because it's just the way brushes are. They don't get into those nooks and crannies if you leave them in big size. So come in here, we've got that. Now, I think that looks like a pretty smooth mask. If we want to adjust that, we can go into our 100% and look at the view there. And now, just to show you what happens if you accidentally erase too far, let's assume that I accidentally came here and I did some painting right here in the middle of the rock. And that makes it look a little weird compared to the rest of it, right? Because you got these great details here and not so much here. The way you fix that is to literally come back in here with your paintbrush, and you'll see now in eraser mode, the center of the circle has that minus sign. In paintbrush mode, you got the plus sign. And it's okay to go really big because if you paint white over the white, it just makes more white, right? And so I'm going to go across this, bring all that detail back in. You'll notice that in Shadowland here of the mask, everything is back the way it should be. And now suddenly I have this lovely detail extracted layer, but it's only being applied to the rock and to the grass. It would also probably be wise for me to look at the grass and make sure it's okay in the grass. I think that's just a little bit more detail that I want to extract out of the grass. I like the idea of having a little bit of it in there, but not much of it. So what I'm going to do is add some more to the mask to kind of pull that back. But I want to leave part of it there. So I'm going to come over to my brush and work here. Let's put it back in eraser mode because I want to erase the effect along this grass in the foreground. And I want, instead of getting rid of all of it, I only want to pull back about half of it. So we'll do that. Again, I'll have to make my brush smaller so it'll work. And just like before, I want all of the grass with the transition layer kind of right above where the grass is. So now you can see as it draws it in, because I'm at 50%, it's not drawing it as black, it's kind of drawing it as gray, which is something I really kind of like about the way MacPhun handles it. But of course, where I have gone back over, you can see it gets a little bit more removed than I want in a couple of spots. So I might have to come back and kind of guess until I get it right. So lots of guessing. So pay attention to it when you're doing that. Now we'll go back in and look at it 100%. And wait for it. There we go. So now instead of having the super duper hyped up, too crispy to touch grass, we have something that has a nice color variation, has enough definition and clarity to it for you to see the individual bits of glass, but without it looking like dried, harsh, smushed together stuff. And we did that by putting a mask that did a 100% block on the top and a 50% block on the bottom. Now we can come into a couple of other areas and see what else we might want to do. Sometimes I like to play with these in the top. I wonder, would this make it all red? It kind of adds some warmth in there, not what I want to go for today. I often will find myself playing with an HDR one sometimes, which I actually like that a lot for the grass, but I don't like it in the trees or in the mountains or in the sky. So if I wanted to work with that, here's one where I would take that paintbrush and I would paint. Now you see, as soon as I start putting paint down on the canvas here, and I'm still at 50% opacity, so I'm not painting it in full strength. You can go back over it till you get it however bright you want it to be. So because I went in paintbrush mode, it automatically put a black mask to hide most of the effect. And in fact, I might decide, let me come in here, I put just a little bit right here on the tree where I didn't mean for it to, so I want to take that down just a little. But I kind of like having a little bit of it on the trees. When I did that by accident, I decided I liked a little of it, so I'm going to go back here into paintbrush and drop it down even more. We'll go from 50 down to 25, 26, whatever. Go into there a little bit, and then I'm just going to paint this into the trees, and what it's doing is it's brightening them up just a little bit. And you'll notice I left the mouse exactly where it was when I started reducing the size so that I don't accidentally go over that area again. But I'm just going through and hitting those trees a little bit to bring in just a touch more of kind of the shimmery light. Now, we've added, I think, a decent bit of depth to this. I'm going to have to, of course, go back and get rid of the Winnebago later, but we'll do that in Photoshop. Now, you'll see the result of all this. We stacked up multiple presets. I haven't even gone into adjust on any of them, but of course you can go in on any layer and adjust them further and change it. But basically we've created a nice layer stack just like we would do inside of Photoshop, and 2 of those layers are using masks to evenly control kind of selectively what parts of the image we want it to be in. So if we go and turn these off, you'll see here's what we started with. Here was number 1. Here's number 2, and here's number 3, and here's a tip. I've already forgotten what I did there. So sometimes it actually makes a lot of sense to come in and give these layer names that match if you're using the preset. So this was HDR soft. This one was extract details. And that was a sharpening of some sort, so we'll just remember that for now. If you want to, you can keep on editing. I think this supports up to 5 layers, so if you decide you want to get to that layer number 6, you're either going to have to come back, do something in your base layer, and I think, can you drag these around? Yeah, you can reorder them just like you can in Photoshop, or you can go back to Photoshop and then bring the image in again, and then you get kind of a fresh set of 5. Other things with these masks that I didn't show you is you can invert and fill these, or even hit the button to show them. So those are over here right next to where it conveniently says mask. So if we invert this, so right now you'll see that we have applied it a little bit at the bottom, all in the middle and a little bit at the bottom and none at the top, right? So if we invert it, what you'll see is it all applied in the sky, a little bit at the bottom and nothing in the middle. So if we invert it, you see how everything just kind of flips its colors in that mask? It's really just the top and the bottom, so it's taking a minute for the picture to catch up. So this is the original. And now with the funky scary sky, because we flipped it. And the same thing here with this one, you could do that. If you want to fill it all, so if you start to mask it and you decide, you know what, I do want it everywhere, just hit the button and it pours paint in there just like a paint can. If we tell it to show, what it does is it gives you the red area where you've done that. So by having show on this one, I could actually see some spots I have missed in the trees. And I can go back in and fill it in just a little bit better. It also shows me where I have gotten off the trees. And of course, I'm putting too much in here. So I want to switch to eraser mode, and maybe I'll make it a little bigger here just to be a little smoother. There we go. And now instead of 27, every time I just keep dropping it down. It's just part of my disease in here, I guess, how I work. And let's make it really small. We can get these tips right here. And the other thing I can do is I can come back and clean up. So I got a little too close in here, and I can just clean that up. And I probably actually have to change my opacity up to get much cleanup action out of this. And it doesn't have to be perfectly pink free. What we want is that nice subtle transition edge between the two. So any areas that are too pink, I want to pull back on a little bit, but just a touch of pink like that isn't going to bother me one lick. Okay. You'll notice this is a lot like the way it looks inside Lightroom if you paint with the brush. That adjustment brush, by the way, is how Lightroom handles masking. So you've probably been masking all this time and never even realized it. There we go. That is a little bit cleaner, so that was nice. I'm going to be happy with this image at this point, especially when I go in 100%. I've accomplished my goals. I have more detail in the rock. I haven't introduced any kind of scary noise into the sky. So I'm going to hit apply. It's going to process. And then it's going to take me back into Photoshop. And if I decided I wanted to go and amp up my blue saturation in Photoshop, I could certainly do that and use another mask to keep it from affecting the rocks, just like we did in our last lesson. I will tell you, I have found the larger your image file and the more layers you have, the longer this processing will take inside of MacPhun. There we go. I love it. If I didn't love it, I would come here and pull it back and mask it some more. So this is why I always do this from inside of Photoshop as opposed to from inside of Lightroom. Just so you know. I'm going to go ahead and clean up some other stuff on this photo, but take an image of your own, go into MacPhun if you have those tools, practice masking in there so you can learn how it's different from masking inside Photoshop itself.